Remember when I said I wasn't going to use Trenbolone ever again? I lied. Vigorous Steve here. So after doing all of that research for the Trenbolone deep dive, which ended up being over 1 hour long, I decided to add in 25 milligrams to my HRT plus steroid cycle protocol. So basically I've been on a full-blown steroid cycle, albeit low and effective dosages, for about 6 weeks now. The first week was just testosterone and Anavar, and ever since then I've been on testosterone, Anavar, and Trenbolone. So we're going to compare and review the blood work which I took before and after being on this protocol for 5 whole weeks, which I took about a week ago. So the most recent blood work results are 1 week old because I had to wait for the cystatin C and the apolipoprotein B results. And to be honest, these last 6 weeks have been one hell of a ride. Going to the gym and actually enjoying my workouts again. The last year that I was off cycle on ATG and FSH monotherapy with a little bit of growth hormone and Increlex here and there, the workouts were okay, but certainly not good. And now they're great. Actually, they're absolutely stellar. I've been focusing on time under tension and really perfecting my workout techniques over the last year. I knew I wasn't going to set any personal bests. It was simply about maintaining, but really focusing on my training technique so I don't get those old nagging pains and injuries again that I had over a year ago when I was still training in the 6 to 8 rep range. Right now, it's about 9 to 12 reps, sometimes even 15 reps, really focusing on time under tension, 4-second negatives, 1 to 2 seconds in the bottom position, and then a 1 to 2 second positive explosive rep with a peak contraction of half a second, a full second if necessary. So some of those sets last over a minute. Brutal, but still it's a lot of fun being back on cycle. And I do 1 working set and then a back off set, maybe 3, 4, 5 exercises by body part. And that is usually how I get the job done, training 4 days per week, daily fasted cardio every single day for overall fat loss. So without further ado, let me describe to you how 25 milligrams of Trenbolone per week actually is. I got minor bronchoconstriction, which some of you have already noticed of me sitting here recording these videos, that I'm a little bit more out of breath than I was before. During the workout, I don't have any issue. During fasted cardio, I don't have any issue. But just sitting here relaxed on 25 milligrams Trenbolone acetate per week, and I noticed that the length of each sentence that I can now pronounce in between breaths is a little bit shorter. So minor bronchoconstriction. I have minor back knee, which could be due to an elevation in estradiol levels, which we'll get into, or it could be due to hormonal fluctuations and maybe a little bit of cheese and chocolate that I have here and there over the weekend. So I'm slowly trying to phase out the dairy products, but the back knee basically came within the first week of being on the Trenbolone sandwich. A little bit unfortunate, the pictures, you don't really see it, but still I'm very consciously aware when I'm at the gym or going to one of those sauna places where you take your shirt off and you have a little bit of back knee. It's kind of nasty. It's not too severe, but still something that I'm not very proud about. Minor symptoms of gynecomastia. Again, my serum estradiol levels are a little bit elevated. Is that from progesterogenic signaling from the Trenbolone? Is that just from going back on cycle? I remember I got slight symptoms of gynecomastia the last time I was off for approximately a year, and I went simply on TRT of 150 milligrams testosterone per week. I also got a little bit of gyno. So maybe the androgen receptors and the estrogen receptors and the progesterone receptors of the gynecomastia tissue is just super sensitive. After you've been off cycle for that long, I'll keep my eye on it. If I feel that the gyno is getting worse or too severe, even though I'm getting off tren in about a week or so, then I might throw some raloxifene at it for a week and then see how much of the gyno will dissipate. Again, sky-high estradiol levels, as we'll see from the blood work results. And I have minor irritability, which some of you guys seem to love during the Vigorous Q&A. I can't say or pinpoint if it's exactly from the Trenbolone or simply by being on hormones, right? I'm being on about 250 milligrams anabolic androgenic steroids per week in total, right? So maybe there's some overlap there. All things considering, I would say that the 25 milligrams Trenbolone acetate per week experiment was a success because I went from 94 kilos to 100 kilos in as little as 5 weeks. With better body composition, I might add, because I got leaner in the meantime as well. So how much of that is actual muscle tissue? That's 6 kilos on the scale. It's probably 8 to 9 kilos of muscle tissue. Some of that is fullness, glycogen retention, water retention, mineral retention, etc. A good amount of that is actual muscle tissue. Of course, I have myonuclei which are very responsive to anabolic androgenic steroids because I used to be 120 kilos. So I'm still 20 kilos off from my all-time maximum weight. but I promised myself that I would limit myself to 100 kilos, give or take. So I had one cheat meal. I went from 94 to 96, held it there for the entire week, just recomping into that body weight. Had another cheat meal over the weekend, 98. Right? And then every weekend I would basically gain 2 kilos. And now I seem to have stabilized around 100 kilos. All I can basically do is just get leaner for me to build more muscle tissue in the meantime. So I'm just going to recomp hovering around 100 kilos. This has been the hormone replacement therapy plus / steroid cycle protocol. 150 milligrams Bayer Testosterone per week, 25 milligrams Trenbolone acetate per week, and 70 milligrams Anavar per week. So I mix 2 weeks worth of testosterone and Trenbolone acetate into a sterile vial because 1 ampule of testosterone contains about 312.5 milligrams testosterone enanthate, being 1.25 milliliters. And then I added in 0.5 milliliters of Trenbolone acetate, being 50 milligrams. And then I slowly draw that from the sterile vial containing about 0.13 milliliters or 13 IUs on the insulin syringe, sub-Q, every single day of the week. And then, of course, it's 10 milligrams Anavar per day, either pre-workout or split AM and PM on rest days, for a total weekly anabolic androgenic steroid intake of 251.3 milligrams. Nothing crazy, a little bit more than HRT, obviously, and Trenbolone definitely is not HRT approved. So it's basically a baby steroid cycle. I was on 50 milligrams DHEA per day, a little bit too high, so I'll bring that down, as you'll see from my blood work results. When I went on Trenbolone, I added in Pfizer Aromacin just as a preventative measure to keep my estradiol levels a little bit more favorable. Not that Trenbolone is known to alter serum estradiol levels, but due to the progestogenic signaling, I just wanted to play it safe and make sure that my serum estradiol did not end up over 50 picograms per milliliter, because, well, otherwise symptoms of gynecomastia, which still manifested, might have manifested. So maybe 6.25 milligrams Monday, Wednesday, Friday simply wasn't enough. Mark Orvitrel HCG 500 IUs 3 times per week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Growth hormone 2.4 IUs per day, either split 1.2 IUs before fasted cardio and before the workout, or taking the entire dose before bed. On some days, if I wanted to improve my sleep quality, it's been a little bit all over the place. But it's usually 2.4 IUs per day. Increlex, recombinant IGF-1, 500 micrograms per day, split bilaterally, 250 micrograms into the chest intramuscularly, whether that's before workout or upon waking on rest days. Ratio Pharm injectable L-carnitine, 500 milligrams sub-Q before fasted cardio, and again, before the workout 4 times per week. So if I don't work out, I don't take a second shot of injectable L-carnitine. I took Hypoxin 2 times 1,000 milligrams before leg days, but it kept me awake and it ruined my sleep quality for a couple days. So I discontinued that after 2 administrations. After going on the Trenbolonie Sandwich on the 2nd week of the steroid cycle, I increased my telmisartan from 20 milligrams to 40 milligrams daily. I take 10 milligrams ezetimibe daily, 100 micrograms T4 daily. Right now, I'm on 50 milligrams of fluvoxamine daily. I don't see a reason to increase to 75 or 100 milligrams like I initially laid out, because I seem to get all of the benefits of this selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor at 50 milligrams daily. So I'm just going to stay there, and maybe later on I'll increase it, but I don't think so. I think 50 milligrams per day is my sweet spot. And I use nootropics as needed, whether that's 50 milligrams oral modafinil, haven't used that so far. 5 milligrams oral methylene blue, haven't used that so far. But 10 milligrams dihexa or 10 milligrams Noopept, yes please, here and there, as well as 500 micrograms intranasal Sumax, but I haven't used the Selank version yet. And I'll probably run a month of cerebrolizin at 5 milliliters per day after I discontinue the Trenbolone, maybe a week later after I come back from China for the wedding that I have to attend. That is basically the protocol leading into these blood work results. Let's just get started right with it. You'll see here in Urinalysis, both on April 6th and May the 12th, about a week ago, that I was sufficiently hydrated because my specific gravity was at the bottom of the reference range. I always drink 1.5 liters of water and about a cup of coffee before I go in for blood work. Yes, coffee is life, and I don't do blood work without having my cup of coffee in the morning. Doesn't really affect the blood work parameters at all. So all of the results of the urinalysis are basically normal. Moving over to the complete blood count results, you see that after 5 weeks of being back on cycle, including the Trenbolone Sandwich, that my white blood cell count has increased by 23% from 5,300 to 6,500 cells per cubic millimeter. Was I sick? I don't think so, because my white blood cell count differential is pretty similar, albeit a slight fluctuation in the lymphocytes and eosinophils. Again, they're all within normal parameters, so I'm not worried about it. Is this Trenbolone protecting against influenza through an unknown mechanism, like I laid out in the Trenbolone deep dive video? I'm not entirely sure. I would say that this is a normal fluctuation, but I'll keep my eyes on it going forward. Hemoglobin concentration increased a little bit. Hematocrit increased by 12%. So I'm happy to see that back up, because 42% is not good for stamina and endurance, but 47%. Now we're talking. Red blood cell count is increased by 7% from 4.64 to 4.98 million cells per cubic millimeter. So I noticed that my stamina and endurance is improving quite substantially with this increase in hematocrit and red blood cell count, because those 12 rep sets are a lot easier than they were before. Even though I'm using the most terrible steroidal bronchoconstrictor known to man, Trenbolone. And you see that my red cell distribution width increased by about 16% from 12.6 to 14.6%. Now that's probably because the erythropoietic activity of testosterone, Trenbolone, and potentially oxandrolone increases the hemoglobin concentration of all of the new red blood cells which are being produced in the bone marrow. So I'm speculating here that the red blood cells which were produced on HCG monotherapy are smaller, less hemoglobin concentration within, and now the red blood cells which are being produced on a steroid cycle are bigger with more hemoglobin. As you can see that my hemoglobin content in the blood went up with 8%, and the red cell distribution width between the small cells and the big cells also significantly increased. That will probably come back to baseline around 12.5, 13% after 3 months of being back on steroids. But time will tell. This is what I speculate. Blood chemistry and kidney function. Glucose is exactly the same. Between April 6th and May the 12th, blood urea nitrogen went down by 14% from 24.9 to 21.5 milligrams per deciliter. Even though I'm eating the exact same amount of dietary protein, there's probably less protein metabolism within the liver. And of course, the anti-catabolic effects of Trenbolone are probably lowering my blood urea nitrogen content through particular pathways. Creatinine has come up. The metabolism within skeletal muscle obviously has increased because I'm training a lot harder and I've put on a significant amount of muscle mass in the meantime. So that's an increase of 18%. And cystatin C has increased by 7.6% from 0.8 to 0.85 milligrams per liter. But my body weight has also increased by 6%. And of course, this is less of a steep increase compared to creatinine. I'm also hydrating a lot more. I'll probably top out around 0.85 milligrams per liter on my cystatin C levels, which is very comparable to the previous results I've always had on steroid cycles. Uric acid has come down by 30% from 5.3 to 3.7, so that's now at the bottom of the reference range. Maybe I'm eating less purines, that could be. Or again, it's from the increase in hydration over the last couple of weeks after being back on a steroid cycle. Creatine phosphokinase has basically doubled from 1,500 to 3,300 units per liter. That's an increase of 115%, but probably because my training intensity has also doubled, even though the working weight hasn't really come up, maybe by one increment here and there, but the time under tension and the overall intensity of every working set, it's almost doubled, I would say, too. So that's kind of meant to be expected. High sensitivity C-reactive protein has also doubled from 0.7 to 1.5. That's probably the homebrew Trenbolone acetate, but that's produced in grapeseed oil and minimal benzobenzoate and benzoyl alcohol. I would say that this is the best blend that I have access to. But yeah, high sensitivity C-reactive protein still went up. I'm not entirely sure why. Let's see what happens to HSCRP when I take the Trenbolone sandwich out. I will retest my markers when I come back from China, because I also want to see what happens to my estradiol levels and what other practices I need to put in place going forward. Homocysteine went up slightly. I'm still on the exact same vitamin B100 complex protocol to help keep my homocysteine levels suppressed. Let's see, cholesterol down by 50% from 187 to 99 milligrams per deciliter. That's 100% diazetamide. Triglycerides came down from 29 to 19 milligrams per deciliter, probably because I'm just recomping. My insulin sensitivity is great, and I'm on that injectable carnitine bandwagon. HDL came down by 30% from 64 to 45 milligrams per deciliter. That's the testosterone, Trenbolone, and Anavar, obviously. I mean, don't expect to have phenomenal HDL, even if you use citrus bergamot, fish oil, and the daily fasted cardio and all of the good practices that you need to put in place when you're using steroids, HDL will rarely be over 40 milligrams per deciliter. And I'm sure even if I were to continue on the exact same protocol, that HDL would just come down and down and down and down over time. LDL, though, from 106 to 49, a reduction of 54%, that's the ezetimibe. Ezetimibe is very potent. Again, I did not really change much to my diet. My dietary animal meat sources with cholesterol is still exactly the same, but it dropped my LDL in half. And now I almost have a 1-to-1 ratio between HDL to LDL, which I would say is very good for longevity, albeit that I can't agree that Trenbolone or Anavar is good for longevity. Lipoprotein little a went down by 71% from 31, which was slightly out of the reference range before I got back on cycle and using ancillaries, to now 9. So I'm happy to see that. And it's the testosterone and the ezetimibe are both known to lower lipoprotein little a levels. Apolipoprotein A1 found in the HDL molecules has come down with 23%, so that's very comparable to the reduction in HDL from 1.6 to 1.23 milligrams per deciliter, still within the reference range. I'll keep my eye on it. I don't want this to drop below the reference range. And apolipoprotein B found in the LDL molecules has come down with 42%, so that's a little bit less of a reduction compared to a reduction in LDL. Apolipoprotein B went down from 88 to 51, which is now below the reference range, and that's 100% the ezetimibe. Moving over to the liver panel, you see that most of the markers are in range. My albumin to globulin ratio has increased by 10%. It might indicate a micronutrient deficiency or an issue with my liver. I've done some additional ultrasounds and scans on my liver before I went on cycle, but I'm not really worried about this because albumin and globulin are pretty much normal. And my dietary nutrition, I would say, is very, very good. You see that my total bilirubin and direct bilirubin have come down a lot, which is honestly surprising to see. Of course, bilirubin is a metabolic waste product of hemoglobin. And maybe it's because I get less red blood cell destruction now that my steroid intake has come up from endogenous 850 nanograms per deciliter to, well, supraphysiological levels. It might come up at one point or another because now there's a lot of new red blood cell production and hemoglobin production going on. But when that goes up and all of these red blood cells and hemoglobin start to metabolize 90 to 100 days from now, then this total and direct bilirubin will probably come back to similar levels as they were on April 6th. Liver enzymes, which are also found in skeletal muscle, the heart, in the brain, and other tissues of the body, have basically doubled amongst the AST and ALT. So AST went up from 56 to 82, an increase of 46%, and ALT went up from 40 to 62, an increase of 55%, and they're now both out of the reference range. I'm not entirely worried about that. Obviously, I'm taking oral steroids, ancillaries, which are all passing through the liver, even though I do take my Anavar sublingually, and the training intensity has certainly increased, which will also increase these AST and ALT markers. Alkaline phosphatase has come down slightly. I'm still on top of my zinc and magnesium, so I'll keep my eye on this. I'm not really worried about a slight reduction of 7.8%. Usually I'm around 50 to 60 units per liter on blood work results that are stemming from steroid cycles. And gamma GT is still at the bottom of the reference range at 12 international units per liter because I take my coffee, my injectable carnitine, and my injectable glutathione once per week intravenously. Ferritin and iron have come down significantly. Ferritin reduced by 20% and serum iron reduced by 39%. Iron is actually now almost at the bottom of the reference range, even though I'm still eating beef daily, around 200 to 250 grams beefsteak daily, and I take vitamin C multiple times per day, 5,000 milligrams in total, which increases iron absorption quite substantially. But I just think that I get increased iron utilization, whether that is coming from the ferritin or free-flowing iron in the bloodstream, for hemoglobin production, which is significantly increased by going on steroids. So at one point that will balance out again. Hemoglobin concentration will probably top out at, let's say, 17.5 grams per deciliter at the top of the reference range, assuming that I stay on the exact same weekly dose of steroids being 300 milligrams. And then it will probably normalize, and hemoglobin concentration, red blood cell production, erythropoietic activity will kind of stay the same at this weekly steroid intake. And then slowly but surely, serum iron levels will kind of backfill from the dietary beef and the vitamin C that helps with its absorption. Moving over to the thyroid panel, and in hindsight, I should have checked my total T3 and total T4 before and after, because steroids, especially oxandrolone, are known to lower thyroid binding globulins. and have an effect on overall metabolism by freeing up more T3 and T4. And even though I started supplementing with 100 micrograms T4, you see that my free T3 and free T4 have come down quite significantly. But my thyroid stimulating hormone has also significantly come down. So that's a reduction of 32%. So I would say that that's a net positive, less burden on the thyroid from thyroid stimulating hormone. But maybe the metabolism is taking a beating. I don't think so. It's probably just more free T3 and more free T4 because they're less bound to thyroid binding globulin, but they might be lower in serum because this is right before I would otherwise dose my 100 micrograms T4. And I would say in a net positive outcome that my metabolism has increased significantly because I'm waking up leaner and I'm getting fuller and more muscular and more vascular every single day of the week, excluding Monday, because on Sunday I have a boatload of cheat food. And I still like to go out and have something nice. Moving over to the sex hormones, beta-HCG has dropped from 28 to 11.5 milli-IUs per milliliter, a reduction by 60%, probably because I reduced the Merck Ovitrol recombinant human chorionic gonadotropin by 50%. And I tested, I think, my beta-HCG the day of the injection on April 6th, but on May 12th, that's already 2 days after the last administration taking place on Friday. Cortisol has come down quite significantly by 17% from 15.4 to 12.8 micrograms per deciliter. That's probably the Trenbolone and the Anavar suppressing cortisol levels. And of course, testosterone, exogenous testosterone, that is, has also a suppressive effect on serum cortisol levels. And now the fun part, the crying before the Titanic sinks part. Estradiol has increased by a whopping 251% from 30.8 to 108.3 picograms per milliliter. And yet I feel exactly the same, albeit that I have slight symptoms of gynecomastia. This is 99%, I'm sure, that Trenbolone is detecting as estradiol. The weird thing is that I don't have any blood work results of Bria Labs, where I was on Trenbolone before, because I stopped it, well, I think close to 9 years ago on my wife's request. And at that time, I was doing my blood work somewhere else. So I really had to dig through all of my consultation clients and coaching clients' blood work results that have taken place at Bria Labs in Bangkok, Thailand. And some of them also have super duper high estradiol levels while on a low dose of Trenbolone. Some of them are undetectably high when they're running like 700 milligrams Trenbolone acetate per week. Usually you don't advise that, but for particular contest preps, that might have been used back in the day. So yeah, I'm 100% or almost 100% convinced that my serum estradiol is not this high, and it's merely a Trenbolone detecting as estradiol. So that brings me to a little bit of a crossroads, right? I'm on Trenbolone for 1 more week, then I'm taking it out, and I wonder how long it's going to take for this Trenbolone to metabolize. Based on the drug testing results, which I reviewed for the Trenbolone deep dive video series, it might take a couple weeks. So I'll retest most of the blood work parameters, which are slightly off in these results, let's say the first week of June. And then I'll do a full blood work result again in the middle of June. Just want to see where my serum estradiol levels are at after, let's say, 2 weeks of Trenbolone acetate. For now, I'm not going to change anything, right? The symptoms of gyno are already there. I might throw in a little bit of raloxifene, depending on how I feel after I discontinue the Trenbolone. But for now, I'm just going to keep the Aromacin and at exactly the same weekly intake, 6.25 milligrams, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and leave the raloxifene as a last resort. Progesterone has also come up with 33% from 0.12 to 0.16 nanograms per milliliter. I have not added in the pregnenolone, and even though mitochondrial function is fully upregulated, I suspect that the Trenbolone is also detecting as progesterone, right? We don't have access to sensitive testing in Thailand, or at least not to my awareness, at any of the private clinics or Bria Labs for that matter. So in this case with Trenbolone, it might detect as estradiol and progesterone. And you see here from my prolactin, you would expect it to shoot up to like 40 nanograms per milliliter, but it went up slightly from 8.6 to, let's say, 11 nanograms per milliliter, an increase of 28%. My libido is exactly the same. Actually, it's 10 times better. Who am I going to kid? My libido is like 10 times better compared to HCG monotherapy. The prolactin is not suppressing my libido in any way, shape, or form, and I don't see a reason to throw the K-Burgo line at it because I'm coming off the Trenbolone sandwich in 1 week. Total testosterone increased. The last time it was 730 nanograms per deciliter, and it went up with 62% to, let's say, 1,200 nanograms per deciliter between megadosing HCG monotherapy and lowering that to 50%, 500 IUs 3 times a week, and adding in 150 milligrams testosterone enanthate on top. SHBG has plummeted, and thus free testosterone and bioavailable testosterone has increased, well, almost to 200%, and I surely feel a difference. I absolutely feel great. And this SHBG will probably tank more and more and more as the cycle continues, and there's not really much you can do about it. And I would expect my SHBG to be, let's say, 20, 25 nanomoles per liter if that estradiol was truly 108 picograms per milliliter. DHA sulfate has increased by 150% from 280 to 700 micrograms per deciliter, so I'll dial back the exogenous supplemental DHEA from 50 milligrams to 37.5 milligrams. I should have just checked my previous protocols when I was running 50 milligrams DHEA, which I also needed to reduce to 37.5 milligrams based on very similar results on my blood work results back in the day. So 37.5 milligrams DHEA is where it's going to be. Growth hormone is increased by 200% from 4.4 to, let's say, 13 nanograms per milliliter. Back then, I was, I think I took 10 or 20 milligrams melatonin the night before going in for blood work. And now I took 10 IUs of Omnitrope about 2 hours intramuscularly into the shoulder to see where my serum levels would end up. I would assume that this would have been, 25 to 30 nanograms per milliliter. So I'm a little bit disappointed to see only 13 nanograms per milliliter on a 10 IU Omnitrope shot. But it's okay. Right? I might have to do a 2 IU IV shot, but I get a little bit of post-injection pain from this Omnitrope, and it's sourced locally. So I'm not entirely sure how legit this Omnitrope is. Right? I'm just going to stick to the size that I was running before, but since it's available, I wanted to do a serum test, and I would say that these are lackluster results. IGF-1 increased by almost 300% from 124 nanograms per milliliter to 475 nanograms per milliliter. That's 100% to 500 micrograms Increlex that I injected the day before, and maybe a little bit of overlap from the growth hormone that I'm taking. But I was taking 2.4 IUs growth hormone when my serum IGF-1 was 124 nanograms per milliliter. So I don't produce that much IGF-1 in the liver with intramuscular or subcutaneous growth hormone administration. And even if I bump up my growth hormone to 10 to 12 IUs, which I'm not going to do, just wanted to do this one serum test. But even then, my IGF-1 would be maybe 200 nanograms per milliliter. So Increlex, for me, is the way to go. And luckily, my IGF binding protein 3 has only come up with 63% from 3,200 to 5,200 nanograms per milliliter. So that's still within the reference range. So that's a boatload of free-flowing Increlex in my system. And that really helped my body composition, my fullness, my pumps, and my overall enjoyment in the gym. Insulin levels went up with 200%. Could be, I probably had some small cheat meal the Saturday before because I felt a little bit depleted. So maybe that's why my insulin levels went from the bottom of the reference range to still at the bottom, but an increase of 200% compared to before. And hemoglobin A1C has come up with a little bit as well. I would say that all of these results are okay for me to keep going and make a couple adjustments. But again, based on my serum estradiol levels being so atrocious, I will have to retest 1 week after being, or 2 weeks after being off the Trenbolone sandwich. So the new hormone replacement therapy plus / steroid cycle protocol is going to be still 150 milligrams testosterone enanthate per week. I will switch the homebrew Trenbolone acetate at 25 milligrams per week 1 week from now for 125 milligrams beta-rimobolan. So that's 1 ampule per week. I will mix 2 weeks worth of 1 ampule Bayer Testosterone and 2 ampules beta-rimobolan into a sterile vial, and then inject 0.27 milliliters or 27 IUs on the insulin syringe, sub-Q, every single day. The Anavar will stay exactly the same. I'm going to stay on 10 milligrams Anavar per day until my Body Research Bonivar runs out. That will be the last Body Research Bonivar in existence. It's already expired, but I don't really care because it's pharmaceutical or pharmaceutical grade or close to it, Anavar. And after that, I will see what's available on the market. Total steroid intake per week will be 350 milligrams. So that's an increase of 100 milligrams. But I do feel that milligram for milligram Primobolan is a lot less potent than Trenbolone acetate is. And I will remove the growth hormone and the Increlex. Actually, the growth hormone is out already. I wanted to remove that about 2 weeks before going to China because I have to look absolutely stellar regarding water retention. And it takes about 2 weeks for the subcutaneous water retention to dissipate when I discontinue the growth hormone. I got a couple shots left on the Increlex, but that will come out, and then I will just simply reintroduce that after doing some blood work when I get back from this trip. DHEA, like I mentioned before, a reduction from 50 milligrams to 37.5 milligrams daily. The Aromasin I will probably keep in for another week and then take that out when the Trenbolone goes out and I switch to Trenbolone. The HCG will stay in at 500 IUs 3 times per week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Again, the growth hormone and the Increlex will come out, Increlex in a couple days. Injectable carnitine is the same, the telmisartan is the same, the ezetimibe is the same, the Ultroxin T4 is the same, the fluvoxamine is the same, and the nootropics will all stay the same. So going forward, I really have to, again, keep an eye on this gyno. If the gyno gets any worse or just looks terrible after the water retention from the IGF-1 and the growth hormone has dissipated and I can get a firm grasp on how bad it looks, I might run a month on 120 milligrams roloxifene daily, 60 milligrams in the morning and 60 milligrams in the evening to kind of shrink that back. At one point or another, I will have to do a gynecomastia surgery to get that resolved. But mentally, I'm not ready to do a surgery just quite yet. So be patient with me. And again, regarding the roloxifene being a selective estrogen receptor modulator and all, I also checked my clotting factors on the latest blood work results. They're all within normal parameters, so I won't bore you with it. And the last time I went for a cardiac angiogram with contrast, my CAC score was 0. So I'm not worried about any blockages. That was only, 2.5 years ago, I believe. And yes, I take my fish oil and vitamin E and vitamin K for normal platelet aggregation. So I'm not worried about any blood clots, but unlike so many others out there running selective estrogen receptor modulators, I stay on top of my blood work parameters and do my imaging. So 1 month on roloxifene shouldn't be an issue. But after that, I got all of the results from 120 milligrams for an entire month already. The last time I did that experiment to shrink gynecomastia tissue. And if anything, it will shrink by half. So that's the maximum you're going to get out of a protocol like that. And after being on 150 tests and let's say 125 milligrams primo for a couple weeks, and assuming that my serum estradiol levels are normal and the gynecomastia tissue has retracted and dissipated to a certain extent, I might throw in 50 milligrams Testosterone acetate weekly. But I haven't fully decided yet. Again, I want to wait on my blood work results from mid-June to confirm that my serum estradiol levels are within normal parameters, and again, that the gyno has dissipated, because, well, a Testosterone is basically magic for gyno if you already have pre-existing gyno. And who knows, I'll probably just play it safe and start with 25 milligrams Testosterone acetate weekly, because it does aromatize into 7-alpha methyl estradiol, which has a similar receptor affinity as estradiol itself. And then even at that point, I probably need a little bit more Pfizer Aromasin to keep that serum estradiol or serum 7-alpha methyl estradiol under control, so gyno and water retention and overall mood doesn't get worse. But again, stay tuned for that protocol. I'm going to remove more stuff that I'm putting in, and then based on the blood work results, which will take mid-June, then I have a firm grasp on what the next step is going to be. For now, I'm just going to recomp, stay around 100 kilos, get leaner and get more muscular and a little bit stronger at the same time. I'm having a lot of fun, but at 100 kilos, that's basically where I draw the line. And I think I don't need more than 350 milligrams to get myself down to, let's say, 6% body fat over the next couple of months. I'm doing it nice and steady, nice and slow, so it doesn't affect too much my mood, mental well-being, and my overall productivity here. Because, well, I'm a husband first, a businessman second, and a bodybuilder third. And when I have kids a couple months from now, right, fingers crossed, do a little prayer for me. We're going through the IVF process now. When I have kids, I'm a husband first, a father second, a businessman third, and a bodybuilder fourth. And even though I'm having a lot of fun with bodybuilding, I don't see a reason to really increase my dosages if I'm already 100 kilos and I can slowly recomp in this weight. All right, I won't bore you with any more details. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found it informative regarding your decision-making process. And again, if you do blood work every month, you have a firm grasp on what's going on and you don't have to panic when you see the results, as I did not panic when serum estradiol levels were so sky high, because I know that Trenbolone detects as estradiol. Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find everything that I'm associated with down below in the YouTube description section. If you want to do blood work of your own and you live in the United States, look no further than Merrick Health. I have discount codes for very comprehensive panels and budget panels. Link down below. The best pre-workouts you can find over at Gorilla Mind. I have discount codes for that as well. Save yourself some money shopping online. And then, well, you have more money for blood work later on, right? To keep yourself healthy while doing crazy stuff to your body like I am doing. Vigorous crew, you guys know to do a front double bicep for you guys. I got 1 week left on the Trenbolone sandwich, and then I'm going back to the tried and proven Triforce of Testosterone, Trenbolone, and Anavar. And maybe at one point I'll add some growth hormone and Increlax back in for it. For now, I'm going to let all of that water dissipate so I can look nice and streamlined when I'm the best man on my best friend's wedding. See you guys later.